Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Ted Santos, and I am your host of Friday Nights YouTube and Chill. We are the show that likes to talk about the intimacy of relationships, where we sit back, we chill, we talk about love, sex, intimacy, the most intimate parts of life and love relationships. So join me for YouTube and Chill tonight. It's Friday night, and it's time to YouTube and chill. And you'll see we are definitely taking on a topic that revolves completely, fully, 100% around sex. I'm here in the New York, New Jersey. I'm in New Jersey, New York area where we are well into 90 degrees. So we're going to take on a hot topic of sex workers. And there's all kinds of controversy around, are they being treated well by society? Sex work. So should sex workers be respected as real workers? That's the question we're asking. Sex work. They're asking for different rights, and I guess we should also be concerned about health conditions of sex workers. Very interesting. Here in New York, I understand if the police suspect someone of being a sex worker and they stop them and find out that they have more than I think it's more than three condoms, they can be arrested as, I guess, in some way of conspiring to distribute sex amongst the public. And I think there's another state where they do that also. So I'm going to do a screen share. But as you come in, smash that like button and subscribe to my channel. If you haven't subscribed already, this is Friday nights where I talk about, this is the YouTube and Chill. We kind of sit back and we talk about intimacy. We love talking about sex. And we're going to, like, pun intended, dive into sex tonight and sex workers. Hey, PJ. So they need a good pension package. You know, there's a subtitle for this. Should we also discuss whether or not sex workers benefit society? How does society benefit from sex workers? I saw a video, and will sex workers within that, do they provide benefit to society? Are sex workers ultimately going to be threatened? And I saw a video of a guy who had a sex doll that it said it could cost up to $44,000 for this sex doll. But this guy seemed to be in a relationship with his sex doll. So will the sex worker become obsolete? It cuts down on rape. Do sex workers experience violence themselves? I would wonder about that. So does it? Because there are reports that when they put strip clubs in certain areas, the crime of rape increases. And I think that was even in Great Britain also. So I don't know. I question that. That's why so many communities are against having strip clubs in their communities, because After men go to the strip club, they're all worked up and they just might rape someone. What's going on, Lando? Good to see you in the house. Smash that like button, guys, as you come in. You know, it's Friday night. We're going to sit back. We're going to do a YouTube and chill, and we're going to talk about sex and intimacy. But we're going to talk about sex from a very different perspective than what I normally do. I'm normally talking about sex and relationships, or even if you're pumping and dumping, right? So there are ways to engage a woman where you're going to enjoy a sexual act. But now we're talking about sex purely as a transaction. Here's my money, give me the goods and the service, and I'm out. A lot of guys say they pay sex workers not for the sex, they pay them to leave so they don't have to hear any of the other things that come with sex with a woman. They don't have to deal with a commitment. They don't have to deal with her demands of what she wants. And sex work, or a man who hires a sex worker, he pays her so that when he's done with what he needs, she leaves. What's going on, Eugene? So that's a good conversation. How do sex workers benefit society? I don't know. I can't say. But I'd just like to know what people think. How do you think sex workers benefit society? Do they? I heard a guy talking about he hired an escort. I'm going to save that. But I've heard guys talk about um, some benefits of sex workers. So the conversation today is, should sex workers be respected as real workers? All right, cool. I got you, Eugene. And to your point, PJ, 38% of marriages are sexless. That's a lot. Like, that's right at almost at 40%. Uh, I would assume porn is definitely sex work, right? I mean, these women are entertaining you with their own sex acts. And however you engage that entertainment is up to you. I think that's what you're saying, PJ, in your coded writing. I got you. I'm pretty sure. So a lot of guys, and so let's add, you're across the pond, PJ. Here in the U.S., we have record numbers of men under 30 who are virgins. Like, I don't think ever in the history of the U.S. have we had so many men under 30 who are still virgins. We have this thing called incels. So I don't fully understand. Some of these men may voluntarily be virgins, right? They want to get married. And then there are men who are involuntarily virgins. They're having a difficult time finding a woman who wants to have sex. A lot of women believe that the bad boy is going to deliver the goods. This is one of the reasons why I talk about the need for men. It's so important for men to never underestimate a woman's desire for sex. And I don't mean that in some pejorative, like, dirty kind of way. I'm saying that we've asked women to pretend they don't want sex, and men kind of accommodate that, which then keeps the woman boxed in and worried about being judged because perhaps she has a bigger sex drive, or she may want to do some things, have some freedoms sexually with her man, and not want to be judged. And on top of that, if a man hasn't learned his way around a woman's body, even though sex may be important to her, she may not be getting her needs met. So if we were to look at, are there possible benefits? I guess that's where a woman who's a sex worker could serve as a teacher, a mentor, educational. Sex workers could serve as education, right? I understand porn does that. What's going on, cuz? I see you there in the house. I understand that with so much access to free porn, that it has had a huge impact on um, sexual proclivities. Like some of the ways, accepted ways of having sex, like today in the 21st century compared to, um, 30, 40, 50 years ago. Now, you better believe there have been orgies and swingers, and there were bathhouses. New York had a place called, um, I think it was called Plato's Retreat, and it was just a sex club. And my understanding is most of the people who attended those sex clubs were well educated, like PhDs, MBAs. They were well educated, and they just wanted this freedom to explore. So if you're not going to those kinds of places and you don't have great access to women, you're in a sexless marriage. Is it beneficial for a man to use an escort or someone who provides sex as a service, as a transaction, if his wife isn't having sex and he still needs that desire fulfilled? Is it safer for a man to go to a sex worker? Because if he has an affair with a woman, she can always kind of hold that, almost like a blackmail, extortion. If you don't comply, and you hear these stories about women who freak out and eventually expose the man to his wife. So is a sex worker a safer way to go? Hey, Lando, so you just laid something important out. So personally, I've never used a sex worker. Even when I had a buddy of mine who was going to pay for it, I was living in Acapulco, Mexico, and the woman really was attractive. She had a great body, and when I walked in, she was kind of all over me all night. And my buddy said, "Hey, I'll pay for her for you." And I was like, I I just don't like the idea of sex as a transaction. And so you said, the lack of fulfillment, right? So sex is important to me. So to have sex with a sex worker just because I can, I'd rather I'd rather get sex on my own merits, right? But if that woman wasn't a sex worker, I surely would have wanted to pursue her. But he did buy her that night for him and another buddy. She spoke zero English, so I was sort of the interpreter. So, and yes, Lando, it is a treat to be with a woman who wants you. Right. So there are some other risks, right? So the if a woman is having sex with 10, 20, 40, 50, hell, I've heard stories of women in some Asian countries having sex with more than 100 men in a day, in a 24-hour period. I would assume that increases her ability to have some sort of sexually transmitted disease. Lots of people say, "Oh, sex workers are they're going to be more aware of their body and go see doctors." But in a day, that one day that you had sex with 20 guys, you may not know that been exposed to something for a day, a week, or depends on what the STD is. Interesting, PJ. Uh, can't guarantee love. Well, do you really need love for great sex? That's a question. Do you really have to have love for great sex? I mean, if you bring together two people who know what they're doing, do you really need love? So there are talks about like the World Health Organization is in talks of creating a paradigm shift. I'm gonna do a screen share. There's a woman doing a TED talk about sex workers. She's one herself. I'm gonna share that with you. Yeah, PJ. See, I always did Lando talk about love? No, Lando actually talked about fulfillment and a woman who desires the man. So I've had women desire me and not love me. That they wanted to have sex, like they really wanted to have sex with me, and there was no love, and that was a great feeling to be desired by a woman who's really attractive. She was very attractive, and she was like, I want this now. So Imperator, I'm not 100% sure what you're saying, but if I take what you're saying, with all the virgins, right? All these men under 30 who are virgins and all these sex workers, these men are still virgins. So even though we have sex workers, we have strip clubs where you can find sex workers, and you have escort services, which may be uh, probably a lot more expensive, but still you have virgins. Yeah, Lando, I'm with you on that. A woman who just lays there and no effort, man. That's hey, hey, Lando. I'm okay with the woman having lust for me. It's okay. I mean, so in Lando, here's the other thing. The Unless the woman is like just strictly looking for a transaction, if a woman is lusting after you, I'm careful about when I say this, because I know a woman told me she walked into a shoe store and saw a man working there, and she said the moment she saw him, she knew she was going to have sex with him. So that woman wanted that man, and as she got to know him, she found out he was married, and she did not care. She wanted that man. That was lust. She wanted that guy, and she probably like laid it out for him really well, and she didn't love him. She had sex with him once, and that was it, because he was a married man. But you could say she lusted after him. Okay. So I don't want to guess what you're saying, Imperator. So if the men who are not having sex, how are they causing chaos? And Lando, you get what I'm saying. Yeah, I mean, to have a woman want you, man. I mean, uh, not really the show for sharing those kinds of stories, but it really is interesting when a woman, like, really, she does want you and she's not afraid to express that. And she may or may not love you, but Imperator, the men who are virgins, how are they causing chaos in society? So one of the things the World Health Organization, oh, the men not getting sex should cause chaos until they are. So interesting. Someone was talking about Greco-Roman period, where there was really this idea of monogamy didn't exist, and so here's what happened: um, the men in the military who were high ranking, those guys, women had no problem being one of many with those men. The guys who were like like the warriors, the warrior heroes, women flocked to them. And during this Greco-Roman period, women had no problem sharing men, like zero. This is how their society functioned. But here was the problem: the men who were the cooks and the cleaners and the farmers, those guys couldn't get women. So the guy who was a general might have had access to 20 or more women. And the guy who's a warrior, same thing. Maybe someone else had access to 100 women, and these 100 women had no problem sharing that one man. But once again, the guy who was the cook, the cleaner, the bottle washer, they didn't have bottle washers then, but you get what I'm saying. The farmer, the guys who were lower down on the scale, they could not get women because all the women flocked to, it was like 80 to 100% of women went to that small 20% of men. So what happened? Those guys who were not getting women were about to cause chaos and turn everything upside down because they couldn't get access to women. So that's what you're saying, Imperator. So as a result, what they did is said, well, we're going to get into monogamy here. So it's only one woman to one man. That way, other men lower down will have access to women. So you didn't have men monopolizing women. Yeah, great sex can motivate. Like it can, yeah, it does something. Your brain, your body. It's sex. They say I've heard was the best exercise in the world, but it also helps recharge, reset your brain. It's really good. I think we haven't even scratched the surface for all the things that sex can do for us. If done well, done right, right. So maybe there's more of an artful way. I don't want to say science, but maybe there's a science and an art to sex, and we're kind of missing that. And I don't. So in the context of sex workers we have now, strippers, prostitutes, escorts. I don't know if those women, you have books like the Kama Sutra, right? I don't know if those women look at the art and the science of a book and how they sexually mate with one man, right? With one man contrasted with another. So if you were to really understand the art and science of sex, whether you're a man or a woman, you would understand that the way you engage one person is not the way you engage another. So if sex workers had that kind of skill, maybe that would be different. Yeah, affection does a lot. Yeah. Well said. Yep. Not motivating sex, affection, right? And even affection outside the bedroom. So you guys are kind of mixed on whether or not sex workers benefit society. Let's see. Okay. So quick screen share. Uh, this is sex workers part of the solution. An analysis of HIV prevention programming to prevent HIV transmission during commercial sex in developing countries. So that's part of the concern, right, with sex workers are diseases they may carry, right? A woman has sex with 40 different guys in one day. And that's how they were saying that a lot of HIV was being transmitted in the heterosexual community. Uh, Needles, of course, but and a lot of those women who were prostitutes are, they may have been intravenous drug users also. There was something here. So they want to actually have a paradigm shift in sex workers. They were saying key principles are responsibility for sexual health lies not only with sex workers, but also with clients and third parties, government, and the broader society. So I would assume then that may put some sort of sanctions or policies in place ensuring the health of a sex worker. But I don't know if you can still guarantee that. If a woman has sex with 40 guys in a day, ooh, your guy number 11 and guy number 10 may have had diseases and you're right behind them. So this is the World Health Organization. But I wanted to let's see, which one was this? Here we go. So here's a woman who did a TED talk. She's actually a sex worker. It's interesting to hear the perspective of a sex worker. Interesting. Sex workers discriminate. Interesting. When I used to live in DC, uh, I lived there in the 90s when DC was the murder capital. And like you had these drug dealers who were these really hard, tough dudes. Many of them may have been locked up at some point. And these drug dealers, they made plenty of money. They drove nice cars and they would take a woman out on a date. And if their date didn't want to have sex, he would drop her home and then go down to, there was a club called the Brass Rail, and the Brass Rail is where a lot of transvestites would be on the street working. And a lot of these drug dealers would actually go pick those dudes up who were tall, a lot of them, and have sex with them. So maybe for people who have different sexual preferences, um, I guess you would call those guys, but I don't know if that's bisexual, trisexual. I don't know what you call that. Those guys like dating women. They apparently wanted the affection of women, and if they couldn't get what they wanted, the sexual affection, they'd go get someone else. So maybe sex workers provide a benefit to those men who are looking for something outside of the traditional heterosexual relationship. Maybe that's one way to look at it. So let's see what I want to introduce you guys to this sex worker. Yeah, Imperator. Wow, like it was. So I know a woman who was a model, and there was this nightclub called Tracks, and Tracks was a gay nightclub. It had a straight night, but they had all kinds of events. It was a fairly big club in DC. And they had an event for Hustler of the Year. And she was telling me, all the biggest drug dealers in DC or the DC area showed up there to be Hustler of the Year. And, these cats had mink coats and, these were hard dudes, cuts on their knuckles from fights and maybe a tooth missing, but these were rough dudes. Well, she said they walked across the stage like girls. I was having a hard time comprehending. She said these were the guys you saw out in public. These were rough, mean dudes who would pull out a gun and, put that bullet in you without hesitation. But they were also bisexual. I guess a lot of them have been in prison. So different lifestyles cause people to make different decisions. So maybe sex work can accommodate people like that. And perhaps there are more people like that than we realize. So let's look at this woman doing a TED Talk. So in the event YouTube is challenged by, this is under the Fair Use Act. I'm only showing this for criticism, for education, under fair use. I'm showing this video to share different perspectives, criticism, and education on a very controversial topic.
Because of who I am and what I do, I've been called these insults and more. I've been called a slut, a vagina on legs, a blow-up fuck doll. Some of these words have come from clients, from relatives, from people who have claimed to have my best interests at heart. But mostly they have come from feminists, or, to be specific, sex worker exclusionary radical feminists, otherwise known as SWERFs. My experience of this kind of abuse is minuscule compared to how sex workers are treated on a wider scale, today and historically. We are consistently spoken over and left out of feminist discussions. We are an easy example of the violence of men, the corruption of capitalism, the way women are brainwashed into serving the patriarchy. Many feminists are preoccupied with eradicating the sex industry at the expense of those in it. And by failing to recognize sex work for the physical and emotional labor it is, forget that, most importantly, sex workers are human like anyone else and deserve to have our living and working conditions fought for, just the same as everyone else. Instead of fighting for us, they fight against us.
What do you guys think? They've got feminists working against them. So is it that feminists don't want them to exist? Are feminists against heterosexual intercourse. I mean, these are women who are, you could say, have their own money. So they're not getting support from feminists. And on one hand, what feminists have told women is that they can do whatever men can do. So feminists have told women to go out and have sex with as many men as you want, but not as prostitute, not as a sex worker, as a woman who is emulating a man. And I guess that is the impression that feminists believe, that all men go out and have sex with as many women as possible. So for feminists, there's a difference between a woman who freely has sex, has what you call a traditional corporate job that's considered respectable, and she has sex with as many men as she wants, or a woman who has sex with as many men as she wants and she charges each one of them. The feminists there's a distinction between the two. So let's see what else she has to say here. Hey, what's going on? We're just for you guys to know, on Instagram, we are asking a question: should sex workers be respected as real workers? I'm sharing a TED talk under Fair Use Act, and I have an actual sex worker doing a talk about. Her concern is that it should be part of the feminist movement, and they want rights just like everyone else. So they believe that feminists are working against them. Hey, hey, PJ, you know what? The other thing is sex is a mutual exchange. It really is. I mean, some women seem to have a difficult time and believe that they're doing men a favor. And I think that's one of the things that feminism has pushed, is for women, one, try your options, have sex with as many men as possible, but you're doing this as a favor to men. So whether it's sex, I know a lot of guys will say sex is transactional no matter what, right? You're paying somehow, right? Either you give the woman the money and she leaves when you're done, or you pay for dinner and all kinds of exciting dates, which you're still paying for money just to have access to her body. But the concern is, and I don't know if you're alluding to this, PJ, is if a man is paying a woman for sex, what if the woman wants sex more than the man, but yet we're still paying? And sex is it's mutual. So are we as men diminishing our sexual selves by paying women for sex? Or even believing that women are doing us a favor by having sex with us? Right, Lando, and that's the problem, right? So not only do women believe that men only want one thing, a lot of men buy into that. So we end up diminishing ourselves. Hey guys, as you come into this group, smash that like button. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, this is a great time to subscribe. Hit that bell so that you get future notifications when I'm putting something out, and invite some guys to this room, right? This is the things that I just said, and PJ, I think you're getting at that. You know, how are men valuing their sexual self? And maybe this is a conversation that we ignore because we just say men only want one thing. So if sex is like 1 and 1 is 2, right? You need 1 and 1 is 2 if you want to make a child. So 1 plus 1 equals 3, right? So one man, one woman, you make a new life, and that's it's a third person. And it takes 2. And neither is more important than the other to create life. Except for some reason, when it comes to sex, it seems that men are okay paying the woman for something that she also wants. Like whether it's taking her out for dinner or just paying out flat out, for an escort or a streetwalker. Or we're saying men are just not valuable sexually. Is that what we've been taught? But let's hear what else she has to say.
They focus on demands and discussions that are completely reductive, such as whether or not I'm empowered by my job, something that workers in other industries are not repeatedly asked before their job can be viewed as legitimate. Empowerment is not a prerequisite for human rights. In fact, being given human rights is a step towards empowerment, not the other way around. In March last year, Swedish feminist Katja Ekman referred to Thai sex workers as cheap pussy.
Just a quick comment. In Sweden, the women of Sweden are furious. They want to block Thai women from coming because, as you heard, they call Thai women cheap pussy. Thai women are taking the men like in huge numbers. So Sweden is one of the most egalitarian countries in the world, and it's so wild that as women have they have greater equal access to job and business opportunities as men, and it giving women more opportunities has not made women choose more jobs like physics and investment banking, working on oil rigs. Like women still choose mostly jobs in healthcare and stuff like that. So, but that's a different topic. Yet women are still demanding some level of equality, even though they're still not willing to put in the work that men put in. So men are just choosing to take Thai women, and Swedish women want to completely ban Thai women from coming into the country. Cheap pussy, as she said.
Our foundation, the Thai Sex Worker Rights Org, had this response. Perhaps you don't know that sex workers in Thailand are mothers and family providers. Tonight, at least 300,000 of us will go to work who have never heard of you. You do not need to agree with what we do to earn our living. However, your disapproval should not be allowed to incite hatred or stigma against us. This is just one example of many where sex work is devalued and sex workers are let down by and excluded from feminism. Regardless of your moral or theoretical problem with sex work, attempting to wipe it out does nothing to help those in the industry. What this does do, though, is make surviving even harder for those who are most marginalized. Sex workers are often working class, women of color, migrants, queer, many other mothers. Sometimes drug users too, who then face the double stigma of being both sex worker and drug user. Sex work is often the refuge of those shut out from the dream of financial security. It has been a way for migrant women, the working class, and women of color to reverse the status quo, as through it they can gain access to wealth and power by financially profiting off something they're not meant to financially profit from.
Hey, and for the record, I found an article written in 2019. The number one way women find themselves in wealth, and especially that 1%, which means the gross income for the household has to be $845,000. The number one way women get to wealth is through marriage. Of the men in that 1%, only 15% of them needed their wife's income to make it to that $845,000 mark. The other 85% made that amount of money or more with or without their wife working, like that household income. Um, so I'm not sure how we got prostitution being a path to wealth. But anyway.
And is meant to be controlled by a man. That is their sexual and emotional labor. Society is preoccupied with women who can transcend their birth in this way. Think of Holly Golightly from Breakfast at Tiffany's, Marilyn Monroe, Black China, Melania Trump, who posed for men's magazines in the 90s, which comes under the broader umbrella of sex work, as does all soft porn. The knee-jerk reaction that people often have to sex work, couching a moral mumbling that it is wrong, is tied up with ideas of how women should behave. We are not meant to financially capitalize on our sexuality, but instead give it freely and within the bonds of a relationship. This is why men's sex workers are not scrutinized in nearly the same way as women's sex workers. There is no discounting of their autonomy or attempts to save them. When men's sex workers are clamped down on, it is generally homophobic. The bathhouse raids of the 80s, for example, were more concerned with the visibility of homosexual sex than whether or not men could consent to transactional sex. Women sex workers are seen as passive victims, slaves to the patriarchy, people whose decisions have to be made for. This is how high-profile white actresses, such as Meryl Streep, Lena Dunham, Kate Winslet, Anne Hathaway, and others, can think it is appropriate in 2015 to sign a petition against Amnesty International's decision to advocate for the rights of sex workers. Blind criticism of sex work is ironic, especially coming from these actresses. As a few hundred years ago, actresses were viewed as sex workers because of the way in which they stepped outside the private sphere allowed for women into the public sphere, and often were sex workers too, such as in the case of Nell Gwyn, the renowned actress and mistress of Charles II. I ask, how come faking intimacy in front of a camera is fine, but not between two consenting adults? I ask, how come putting up with an exploitative director is fine in the name of art, but my decision to work under a brothel manager is not mine to make? How can these women look down from their immense tower of wealth and privilege and say how other women can or cannot make money to survive? Casting couch or brothel bed, what is the difference? Women use their body as an individual beauty privilege in many diverse ways to live in this world.
She just said casting couch or brothel. Like prostitution is the same thing. That's pretty heavy. But that has been a path in Hollywood for women. Hell, maybe even for men also. If you want to make it in Hollywood, there's the couch. Take your clothes off and go to work. And she just made the two sort of equal, the same. What's the difference?
Use their body as an individual beauty privilege in many to survive. Casting couch or brothel bed, what is
casting couch or brothel bed?
The difference?
What's the difference? Damn.
Women use their body as an individual beauty privilege in many diverse ways to live in this world. And I say use because it is important to note that I do not sell my body. I do not par away at myself with each work interaction till I'm whittled away to nothing at all. I'm just as loving, caring, open and independent as I ever was. I'm just as much of a person as I ever was. And if I do rent out my vagina, how is that any different to a laborer renting out their arms to stack shelves? An athlete renting out their body for public entertainment? A model renting out theirs to sell products? In 1917, at a US protest of sex workers, brothel madam Reggie Gamble said, "Nearly every one of these women is a mother or has someone depending on her. They are driven into this life by economic conditions. You don't do any good by attacking us. Why don't you attack these conditions? These words ring true 100 years later. If people are so concerned with how other people make money to survive, why don't we make surviving easier for those who are most marginalized?
Is she making a case for polygamy? Should men have more than one wife so that women don't have to be prostitutes? What's going on, Gene? Eugene, I see you in the house. Thanks for joining in, man. We're talking about, should sex workers be respected as real workers? What do you think?
I definitely think that that's probably one of the hardest jobs in the world.
You think it's one being a
I mean, I know personally probably have within 100 strippers, hookers, all kinds of different women in my phone that are in that industry. Because I'm in and about now in all the clubs all the time, and a lot of them work very hard for their money. They're all about their money. A lot of them lead very different lives outside of the club. A lot of them are nursing school students. A lot of them have different aspirations, whether it be actors and actresses, fame and fortune, or just are paying for school, and it's a way to make money 1 or 2 nights a week that they couldn't possibly make $2,000 a night doing anything else. Some make more than that, and some only make a few $100s a night, or even less than that. They have to take their clothes off for men and be touched and groped. And I really try and keep my hands to myself most of the time when it comes to women in that industry. But some of them, especially the little young ones, I like to get at, but it's all possible and find a different way. And I've done that several actually. So.
Okay. All right. I'm so good. So you think, because a lot of these women have other aspirations and they're doing other things and they have a future, and sex work is just a means to an end so that they can get to, some end of a rainbow so that they can have a different life. I got you. All right. Hold on one second. So I want to let this woman finish what she's saying.
Why not the same passion when it comes to public health care being threatened? Racial discrimination in workplaces, cuts to public school funding. Theoretical arguments can be conducted above our heads, but it is legislation and stigma that affects us. The Swedish model, which exists across a number of countries and criminalizes the buying of sex rather.
Sorry. All right. Do those women look pretty shocked to you? If you're on Instagram, you can't see this screen share, but
which exists across a number of countries and criminalizes the buying of sex rather than the selling of sex, defines pimps as anyone who lives off the earnings of a sex worker. In execution, this means that sex workers can't work together for safety, can't screen clients, can't rent a property, can't use their earnings to send their children to university. The system in the UK this year saw a 70-year-old brothel cleaner charged with brothel keeping after she attempted to save the life of a man who collapsed there. The system in the US, which uses condoms as evidence of prostitution across a number of states, such as California and New York, condemns many street-based sex workers to working without condoms for fear of arrest and the assault that comes at the hands of the police. It also completely ignores the fact that for many sex workers, this is their only viable avenue of income. I'm incredibly lucky to work in a place where sex work is decriminalised. New South Wales is one of only 2 places in the world. New Zealand is the other. So my job is subject to the same rules and regulations as any other industry. Unlike sex workers in the Republic of Ireland, I do not have to worry about being raped by a policeman threatening to arrest me. Unlike sex workers in South Australia, I don't have to worry about being arrested and having a conviction on my record that makes it even harder to exit the industry. I can't donate blood, I can't get work cover, I can't travel to the US, and I very likely will come up against stigma when looking for a job or a rental property. But I'm incredibly lucky. I can work to support myself in safety. I can seek legal aid if something happens to me. And I can, as a white woman, speak about my job without it being used as an argument against my validity as a citizen of this society, or without being held up as an example of my race, both of which happen to migrant women and women of color. Because of my education, people often assume that I came to sex work out of a desire to earn my own money, to be independent from my parents. When in reality, I came to it because my single unemployed parent could not support me, even though he wanted to. In the dichotomy presented in the media of either glamorous, high-flying escort or drug-addicted, downtrodden victim, there is little place for the myriad of stories between. I've worked with an African immigrant who could not get another job because English wasn't her first language, but was able to save up enough through sex work to start her own business and be financially independent from any future partner. I have a friend whose mental illness does not allow her to commit to normal contracted work, but can come and go and work whenever she is able to with sex work's flexible hours. I have worked with a woman stashing away money after every shift so she could save up enough money to leave her abusive husband with her 2 children. Yet if she'd gone to the Salvation Army for help, very likely the first thing they would do is recommend that she leave sex work and put an end to her only income. These unending and moral arguments around sex work distract from the real issue. Instead of having to justify our humanity, justify our profession, and prove our humanity, we should be included in the mainstream feminist movement. So what can you do to incorporate sex workers into the general fight for human rights? Remember that you are the new generation, a political generation, and it is you that will hold sway and shape the future in the years to come. As client, sex worker, member of society, it is you who will affect how sex workers are treated by both legislation and those around them. Watch your language. Even a casual negative comment such as, "she's dressed like a whore," dehumanizes us. Watch your assumptions. Just because a woman is a migrant does not mean she's been trafficked. Include them in feminist discussions. Include them in discussions about PrEP, antiretroviral drugs used to prevent HIV infection, and national health initiatives. The slowing in the spread of HIV in the 1990s is directly and partly attributable to the decriminalisation of sex work in New South Wales in 1995. Donate to sex worker rights orgs. Stand up for sex workers when we're abused online. But mainly, remember that we are not deserving of rights because we are respectable. We are deserving of rights because we are human. Thank you.
Hey, Imperator, she was probably on the card with a bunch of other people, right? So she was one of many. So I guess maybe that they slid her in there. No pun intended. So pure drivel. That's what you got out of that. So feminists are not supporting them, even though feminists support sort of free and open sex. And feminists, you could say, even support transactional sex, right? So man takes you out if he does all the right things. So, you know, as much as feminists tell women to have their own money, they don't tell women to be responsible and pay for dates. So they still want men to be traditional, even though they say the patriarchy is oppressing them. but they don't want women outright, blatantly selling sex. They don't want transactional sex to be a pure exchange of currency. Here's some money, give me some sex. They want it to be a traditional dating ritual and still be transactional. And what is it? 30% of women go on dates just to get free food. So, what did you guys think of this woman, the sex worker? Her reason was that her, single father, if that wasn't so clear, but it seems like she was being raised by a single dad, uh, couldn't afford to take care of her. So her solution was to do sex work. What a thing to watch your daughter go out to make money by having sex, to bring money into the home. So it almost seems that that was more like a political speech. That was a lobbyist on the floor of the House or the Senate asking for a bill to be passed to give sex workers the same kind of rights and privileges as other workers. Hey, right, and who said that? Lando. They regret it, right? So at some point they all regret it. I mean, you know, how many men are out there saying, "I can't wait to marry a prostitute, a sex worker. I just can't wait to do that." Statistics are not in your favor for women who have had sex with a lot of different men and her emotional stability. So there's another price to pay. So I had a guy come live on Instagram, and he was saying he knows a lot of women who are sex workers, and they're in college, they're nursing school, they're doing all kinds of things. They want to be actresses, and they do all kinds of things to earn money. Well, they become sex workers to support themselves. But there's a shelf life on that. So, and if the number one way for women to find to be wealthy is through marriage, how many guys who are that savvy with money are looking to marry a sex worker? And I know there are women who will find this, they heard this one story about a woman in Colorado or something. And I heard about a woman who was a prostitute. I think she ran for mayor or something, somewhere in the state of Colorado. I think she won. But these things stay with you. That emotional instability and other things, STDs, abuse of alcohol and drugs. I mean, that's what a lot of these women are going to be with men that they have no interest in. And who put that? PJ. If a woman finds a man attractive, she's going to get more out of it. She may enjoy it. But what percentage of her customers are guys she finds attractive? And I saw it, Lando. I wonder how many women turn down certain guys for clients. I wonder if that's a common practice. I understand as long as there are men who are paying customers, they will continue. Now, I heard a guy talk about he paid an escort. He paid $1,300 for one night, and she was literally to escort him to a company function. His company had a function. So $1,300. She was apparently gorgeous, and he said that an executive vice president of sales, when that executive EVP of sales saw that guy with this escort, that EVP of sales knew who she was. He had paid her also. So as this guy who had paid, who attended the function with this $1,300 escort, he's going into the bathroom, and the EVP of sales is coming out, and the EVP says, hey, that woman is a class act you're with. And he knew that because he had been with her too. So there are guys, and that EVP was married. There are guys who will pay top rates to have access to women like this. They're not getting women off the street. But still, yep, that was who it was. I just didn't say his name, Lando. That's exactly who it was. Yep. He's not the only guy who does that. There are guys who do that. And perhaps what hurt our society is Julia Roberts in her movie Pretty Woman. Amazing how that one movie had so many women believing that they could be a prostitute and still marry the knight in shining armor. It had an impact on our society. It was so surprising to see. And I'm willing to bet if you looked at the amount of strip clubs or sex workers in general, I bet you it was relatively low before the Pretty Woman movie. They made Pretty Woman almost like a Disney movie of prostitution. You can go from prostitution to the wealthy guy. Yeah, Lando, it does. Yeah. I used to do these CEO events, middle market. I would have a combination of mid-sized companies, meaning $100 million to $2 billion. And then I'd invite retired CEOs of Fortune 500s. And I mean, like, just think of the big Fortune 500 companies. I'd have retired guys there. And I was seeing a woman. I asked her to help me in my company. And she's half Asian and half Dominican. And she's exotic. She's gorgeous. She has this Dominican body, this long, black, wavy hair. And most people didn't know, she and I were together. But the CEOs who did, they had an appreciation for her. There was a certain respect they had for me by being with her. It was very interesting, dynamic to see that. I haven't been with her for years, but I think about 2 weeks ago, I went to visit one of those CEOs at his home, and he still asks me about her. So, and she was attractive without any makeup on. In fact, she wouldn't even wear makeup. So yes, it does have an impact when you walk into a room like that. And they did a study, by the way. The study was to understand what a lot of people want. One of the things they want out of to be in a union with someone, which was to move up to a higher socioeconomic class. And so for men, one of the ways they moved up to a higher socioeconomic class was to be with a very beautiful woman. So not just sexual market value, even in the business world, you walk into a room, That's what men looked for. An exceptionally beautiful woman be on his arm, and it would elevate him. It would support him in elevating to a higher socioeconomic class. Like, other men notice you. Women do too, but other men notice. What women looked for to move up to a higher socioeconomic class was the man's intelligence, because she's hoping to learn something from him to elevate herself. So they're both both men and women are looking to rise up to a higher socioeconomic class, and they both looked for the opposite sex to support them in getting there. They just look for something different. Men look for beauty, women look for just brutal, raw intelligence, high intelligence. And I guess if you have high intelligence and you can lay pipe, she's hit the jackpot. So some men, if you look at sex workers, if you look at escorts who are highly paid, they may or may not have sex. I guess you have to pay extra for that. There are men who use that service as literally as some woman to escort him to elevate his status. To have him walk into a room and be like, I'm a guy who I know how to handle myself. I'm a man. I've got this beautiful woman on my arm. I know how to communicate. I know how to get things. I know how to pull people into my life to be part of my plan. She's fit. She's beautiful. She knows how to socially conduct herself. She has social skills. It makes you look like a great decision maker. And they may not know she's an escort, but there are probably more guys who do that than some of us realize. But it does help open doors for you. There are some guys in those environments who will hit on your woman if it's your wife who's like that. I've heard stories like that. So that's one way a man can benefit. But if you're having sex with her, that's still a risk. That's a risk for sexually transmitted diseases, especially if it's something you can't get rid of. It doesn't have to kill you. It's a risk. And they're risking also. And as you were saying, Lando, at some point how does a woman do that? At some point that can get out. She's got to, if she wants to get married to this great guy, it comes out. Do these women regret it? That would be interesting to have a show with a woman who was a high paid escort. Now she's retired. Did she get married? Did she tell him? Did she have full transparency and say, this is what I used to do? Would anyone marry a woman if she was exceptionally, just extraordinarily beautiful, took great care of herself, used to be an escort, didn't have sex with 40 men a night? She was leased out on however many days a week she worked. Would you marry a woman like that? There are some people who say women like that they have to have excellent social skills. So they're servicing clients, right? So they have to understand customer relationship. They have to understand sales. So if she's your wife, she understands how to be accommodating. So if you have a boss or you have clients, in a non-sexual way, she would know how to be accommodating. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of porn stars. Yeah. Those women get plowed through. But what about an expensive escort? Exceptionally beautiful. She retired from this job. She didn't do porn. She didn't walk the street. Would anyone marry a woman like that? Would you marry or date? So would you marry her? Yes or no? Would you date her? Would you date a woman like that if she retired from being an escort and she's, let's say, 35 now, and she's looking to settle down? Would anyone take her seriously? Not the porn stars. I mean, they get abused. Would you guys ever take a former escort and she's just gorgeous, drop dead gorgeous? Would you take her seriously if you knew that's what she used to do in her past life, retired? You guys don't know? Would you date her? Would you marry her with an ironclad prenuptial agreement, like ironclad? And Lando, she desires you. She's gorgeous and she desires you. And she did that escort business for 5 years. She didn't stay in it too long. She was in it long enough to be part of it. So what would you guys do if you found out a woman did that? Walk away, you ghost her, still lay her down? What would you do? So you think the escorts are cunning? They know how to use their beauty like completely to their advantage to get what the most out of what they want out of a situation. What if she's willing to at work for you? In the sense of work for you, she's willing to go out and network with other women, whether she helps to find you an extraordinary job, right? Because she networked with a woman who is married to a CEO, or find you clients. Work in your business, network. Would you leverage her cunningness? So she's, as you say in Lando, she's not as damaged. Or would you see her as uh, her nature is to be cunning, and no matter what you do or say, she's still going to be that. It's like the story of the scorpion who asks the turtle, can you take me across the river? And the turtle says, no, man, you're gonna sting me and we're both gonna drown. And the scorpion says, nah, man, I wouldn't do that. I just want to get to the other side. I'll show great appreciation. They go back and forth. Eventually the turtle says, get on my back. And just as they're about to get to shore, the scorpion stings them, jumps on shore, and the turtle says, why did you sting me? And the scorpion says, it's my nature. It was just cunning. Is that what your concern would be, Lando? Her nature would be to be cunning no matter what, and it would be a risk. Wow. Interesting. Did you ever ask her why she made that decision? I mean, I feel for you on that one. And I wonder if she regrets that to today. So, I sometimes women do that because that's just the way they think, right? And other times there's something called third-party interference. A lot of women get influenced by a third party. Some could be a man or a woman, but most times it's a woman who's convinced her that she could do these other things. You're pretty, you could get more. You could get more for your beauty. You should get more. He won't know. Interesting. So some women want to be players. Huh, at a young age. Wow. And even that can come back to haunt women, and they regret it. I mean, there are women who were told, try your options. Don't fall in love with the first guy you like. Just because you like him doesn't mean you should be with him. And a lot of women practice that. So the first guy they really liked, they were like, I like you, but I want to try my options. And then somewhere in her late 20s, she's reaching back for that guy. She was told to sidestep him, like she was going for the Heisman Trophy. A lot of women have regrets around that. And they can never go back in time. So it's Friday, it's YouTube and chill. And I wanted to talk about sex in a very different way. And the one way we didn't push it, I didn't push it too hard, is the whole idea of a man's diminished sexual value, the fact that sex is a mutual act. If a woman doesn't know her body, she's an adult, right? So we're talking about adults. If she's an adult and doesn't understand how her sexual body works in order to maximize the pleasure she can have, technically a man is not responsible for that. Now it's to your advantage to understand her body better than she does and to show her the path of pleasure. But if you do that, technically that makes you more valuable sexually than she is, because she doesn't know how to even appreciate sex. Or even when you are that guy, somehow we still have it factored that the woman is doing us a favor, even though she doesn't know how to enjoy and appreciate sex. Like, you can make her body do things it's never done before, and she still may think, I'm doing you the favor. That's something we set up in our society. I technically don't tolerate that from women. I address those things. I had a woman tell me any man could do what you do. And it's like, you're experiencing things that you didn't even know about, because I asked you. You didn't even know about your G-spot. And now here you are. You're telling me anyone could have done it? You should have had. Why didn't that happen before me? I refuse to allow myself to be diminished sexually. And so there's where, for me, that's a problem to pay a woman, because me paying for a mutual act means that I'm worth less in that act, that I actually have to pay to be there, when technically it's mutual. I mean, you guys probably heard me talk about, I went to a bachelor's party, and one of the strippers climbed up on me and asked if I wanted to go in the back and have sex. And I said, are you paying me? And she was insulted. It's like, no, I got skills. I'm the one that's going to be making this happen. I'm doing most of the work. I should be paid. Well, the strippers eventually left because no one was giving them money. They were very upset with us. But yeah, I wasn't paying to have sex. And as I said, I wouldn't even let someone else pay me. I mean, pay for the woman to have sex with me. I'm not down with that. Yeah, yeah, they do that. That's, I ask women, were you told to try your options? And I'll ask them logically, do you understand how that works? And I understand, like a lot of guys say, women don't want to hear logic, but if you have her in a good frame of mind and she's willing to openly talk to you, you really can disrupt that. Because there are things that women don't. If a woman is young, even if she's 25, but if she's less than 25, she hasn't factored in what's going to happen. I mean, women don't even see the wall. It's like the generations of guys. Like this guy stands on a corner and sells drugs, goes to jail, comes out, goes back on a corner. Then his son does the same thing, and then the grandson is out there, and it's almost like they believe none of them are going to get caught up in that system, right? None of them believe that will happen. Well, it's the same thing. Like the wall is undefeated. It comes for all women. And if you play out there too long and you hit the wall, it's a price to pay. So the woman who is really hot at 21, she's not going to be seen the same way at 35. Just her uterus alone, the possibility of complications through pregnancy, to wait until you're 35 to think about settling down. So it's like this. They don't see that it's failed for other women. Maybe some of the younger women being born in the 2000s may be taking note of that. Maybe the jury is out on that, because they're still having stuff down their throat. You should try your options and be with as many men as possible without them understanding there are consequences for that. And if they want to slut it up with their friends, it's a lot of women have been sold that that's what every woman does, go to college and be sluts. But there are still lots of women who don't do that. Now, I'm not saying they don't have sex at all in college. 50 years ago, you may have been more likely to find a woman who was still a virgin in college. Hell, I lived with a woman who was a virgin her freshman year in college. She had been with one guy before me. So there was a time where that was much more common. So I understand there's this sort of hive mindset. But as men, we could actually disrupt that. These women who think being sex workers and strippers or just sex workers, that strippers covers that, that there's a free ride for this. It really isn't. There's a price to pay. There are a lot of guys who will just walk away, and these are guys who really may have been into, like great guys who could have been interested. They just don't want that. They don't want that association with someone who made those kinds of decisions, because there's a price that comes with taking a sex worker seriously. A lot of women may say, well, why is that? That's unfair. But look, if a guy is 5'9", 350 pounds, and he wants to be with the hottest woman, and he makes only $50,000 a year, it ain't gonna happen. And he could say that's unfair, but so that guy can't be upset, just like women can't be upset when a guy says, hey, you were a sex worker and I want nothing to do with you, not on a serious level. You might say it's unfair, but it's just as fair as the woman who doesn't want the 5'9", 350-pound guy who only makes 50 grand a year. You don't want him. And you could say health reasons for the fat guy, and it's the same health reasons for the sex worker. Health reasons for STDs, and now also the mental instability that comes with it. So men have a right to make those choices. And as I said, there are guys who walk into a room with a woman who's a non-sex worker. She's beautiful. She has great social skills. She's fit. She took care of her body, and it increases the respect other men will have of him in that room, like almost immediately. You could say that's unfair, but hey, understand the rules of engagement. Just like you could say it's unfair that you play basketball and you throw the ball up and it doesn't go through the hoop. It hits the rim and doesn't go through. You should get points. It almost went in, but you don't get points for that. You can call it unfair if you want. But if you don't understand the rules of engagement and you don't know how to score, you won't score. So guys, if you haven't smashed the like button, smash that. If you haven't contributed to my PayPal or Cash App, I'll give you guys an opportunity to do that. I'll post it once again. PayPal, Cash App. Always appreciate your support. Look, I know sometimes I bring up topics that are not so politically correct. They're not popular. They're not the things that people talk about. But my commitment is that you one, develop new perspectives you don't only have the perspective that your environment gave you, right? And it could be a great one, but there are so many other perspectives that can support you in navigating this world successfully. So my commitment is to give you different perspectives that help enrich your mind and also give you some tools on how to better navigate dealing with women, so that you don't have to feel like you're also stuck with only one way to deal with women, which is the way we were all told, right? How do you deal with women, right? So they're innocent, made of sugar and spice and everything nice, yet, here they are, sex workers looking to be acknowledged as sex workers, and they want to be treated as the same as the woman who works for a law firm, right? Who's gone to school for all kinds of special training and education to come out and work in the world. And as a sex worker, you could literally just lay there and still get paid because the man had his release, and you get paid. You didn't have to do anything. You didn't have to train. You didn't have to develop. You didn't have to acquire anything. You were born with everything that you needed. Now, I understand if you do oral sex, you may have to have developed some kind of skill for that. But to have intercourse is like batteries already included. So how are we as men told to deal with life and making decisions, and how we see ourselves and how we see women? I have a huge problem with the way men are diminished sexually, and men can better navigate that by confronting these things with women and having women rethink this. And even the women who have been told to try their options, there are logical conversations in helping them understand the consequences and how men think. They may think they have the freedom to do whatever they want, but men are going to hold them to some sort of responsibility, some accountability, and they may not know it. And they may need to understand the wall. And so hey, look, guys, I'm providing you with tools so that you can better navigate those conversations with women. So your support is appreciated. Thanks for engaging me in this one. This was Friday night YouTube and Chill. And I just really wanted to talk about sex and sex work and the many perspectives on sex workers and how that affects men, society in general. Is it to our benefit? Are, as you said, are women delusional about being sex workers and how they want to be seen? You know, as I said, there's zero training to have a vagina. No work, no acquisition of skills. You don't have to buy anything. So, guys, thanks a lot. I'm going to shut this one down. Have a great weekend. I'll be back Sunday with Straight Talk, and always appreciate your support. I'll see you guys soon. Take care. Good evening, and thanks a lot. Goodbye.